G'day guys, Frasier Perry's done it again by going undefeated 6 rounds with the World Eaters, absolutely dominating another massive event, and he was kind enough to jump on the channel tonight and talk us through every single one of his games, and then we also deep dived some very broad World Eaters strategy and some detailed World Eaters tactics. So we went into the macro and we looked at the way to play World Eaters in general, and then we also zeroed in on some very specific strategies and tactics that you can do in your games to secure those results. So if you want to learn a little bit from one of the masters in the faction, Frasier's your go-to guy, and I had him on the channel for the second time in a couple of weeks. The guy is absolutely tearing it up, and with that being said, let's jump over into this conversation.
Look for the blood god.
Alrighty, Frasier, welcome back to the channel. Last time we spoke, you had just gone 7-1 running the World Eaters, and you've given me 1 week off, and then you've gone in and you've dominated another event. And the comments section blew up of people saying, I need to get you back on. So here we are. And I look forward to hearing about this next event that you've gone to and the amazing results that you've been able to deliver with the World Eaters yet again, demonstrating that we are truly a faction that can, put in the work and make it a real hard time for our opponents on the table, which is really, really exciting. Did you want to maybe just start with a really brief rundown of what this event was, the format, the hosts, the city, all that sort of information, and then we'll jump into your list, matchups, etc. in a moment.
Yeah, for sure. So this list was hosted by Goonhammer, and it's supported by a kind of like a gaming team called Gaming Under the Ice, in Winnipeg and Manitoba in Canada. And generally, this is kind of like one of the larger singles events that we have in Canada, especially for the prairies. So people are traveling from, I don't know how well people know Canada, but like Saskatchewan, Alberta, kind of like all like congregating in like this city in like this prairie province. And it's a WTC style event. It's capped at, I think it was 70 or 80 players it was capped at, but it ended up at 66 because of last minute drops and so on and so forth.
Yep.
But it's 6 rounds, WTC style, and the winner gets like a big Goonhammer belt, which I've posted in the chat. Actually, it's like a big WWE style. It looks unreal, but like lots of people travel just for like the trophy.
Yeah.
I went there. It was my first time going out there since 2022, and in 2022 I finished third. So I've really wanted to go back and get the belt at some point. I took a break from 40K for like a year in between like 2022 and now. And now that I am back in what I would call full swing, I wanted to go back and get the belt for the event.
Well, congratulations. I saw the picture up on Facebook of you holding the belt real proud. And I was like, yeah, that's a very cool trophy. I'll put the image up in post editing so people can see, because it's definitely something that, is inspiring. When you see a trophy like that, you're like, I need one of those. Like, I've got plenty of little glass bits and pieces, but I don't have a belt. That's definitely something that's very cool. It's also interesting to note that you had a GW event in the previous week and then a WTC event this week, so it just shows that Worldies have quite a bit of range. But sorry, I cut you off a little bit there. You were about to say something?
No, that's okay. I was just saying, like, stuff like that and trophies like that, it's nice when you get older to kind of like show your family and show your kind of like when you used to play sports when you were younger, just being able to show off like your kind of like accolades and trophy room. And it's kind of funny, like when you have somebody come over to your house just to play a game and they walk in your basement and the entire wall is just covered in trophies. And they're like, oh shit.
Yeah, you can see I've got them up on the screen behind me there. I've got like probably about 50 trophies, maybe even more, from various different events over the 15 years I've been playing 40K. And I had my nephews over the other day, and my nephews walk into my hobby space and they're just absolutely blown away. Like, to them, I am the coolest uncle that ever existed. And every now and then I like to come down and just sort of look at him like, I remember that one from 7th edition and remember that one from 9th edition, and like just reminiscing on those games and the excitement and the trophies are really
Yeah.
cool. But having like a sort of a centerpiece trophy that's a belt, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Um,
gonna keep trophy chasing for a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the things as a TO. If you want more people to attend your event, one of the areas you can look into is do something interesting with your trophy. We actually have
Yeah.
an event series down here called RatCon, and they do a belt as well. It's like a WWE
Yep.
style engraved belt. Um,
Yeah.
and I haven't got my hands on it yet, but I'm aiming for it. Um,
Yeah.
all right, cool. So this one was 6 rounds, was it? This event?
6 rounds.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
WTC style. The list was built for WTC style, and I was just kind of practicing with it last weekend because I have almost no time for practice games. So I wanted to use the GW event to warm up, and then this was like the main event for
yeah,
me.
yeah. Well, it just goes to show that practice was worth it because you were able to sort of, follow that up with the strong results here. So undefeated first place, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Because every now and then, depending on the size of the event, the number of rounds, you can end up with somebody who wins the event that has a draw. So,
Yeah.
but it's good to see the World Eaters going just straight out undefeated.
Folks, let me tell you, Angron's rules were ruined, totally ruined by the previous guys. They didn't know what they were doing, believe me. But we're going to make them great again. So great, so strong, so powerful. Get your Make Angron Great Again hat today and join the movement. There are links in the description to our store where you can get your own Make Angron Great Again hat, support this channel, and join the movement. Now back to the video.
Did you want to maybe just do a brief recap of your list? I know we discussed it last week and nothing's changed. So if people want to hear you go into more detail on why certain units were selected, I can put a link to that previous video to save you sort of going over it twice. But a brief recap just to provide context for the rest of the conversation.
For sure. So a pretty standard Berserker Warband list. In it, I have Khorne, Master of Execution with Favoured. I have a Slaughterbound with the Berserker Glaive. I have a Demon Prince with the -1 damage helm. I have 2 squads of 10 Berserkers. I have a squad of Jackals. I have 2 squads of regular 8-bound, 1 squad of Exalted. I have a Rhino, only 1 Rhino, because Khorne's starting in the Rhino and Mo's starting behind the Rhino. 3 squads of Spawn. And then 2 Forge Fiends. And I don't think I'm missing anything. Because last time we talked, I think I said Jackals.
You think you said Jackals? Okay, cool. Last time I think you missed the Forge Fiends.
Fiends.
Yeah.
That's okay. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward Berserker Warband with the double Berserker brick.
Yeah. It's a very, very cool list. It's interesting that the community seems to have really just sunk their teeth into the Berserker Warband. And I think there's multiple people running very similar lists. Even myself, I'm running lists that are similar to that. The one area that you and I deviate is you got the 2 units of 10 Khorne Berserkers, whereas I lean in toward having 1 and then trading that second unit for some more small trading pieces, like some more 8-bound and some more Hellbrutes and stuff like that. So I look forward to sort of pulling that apart. Maybe after we've gone through all of your rounds and talked about the results you got, we can talk about that specifically as a choice. Before we jump into each game, because I look forward to hearing about who you got paired into, what their list looked like, and then sort of some brief moments from the game. But what's your sort of macro strategy, or the way that you sort of build the list? Because obviously when you're writing a list, you're writing units in with a specific purpose. You're not just taking units just because they're good. You're taking them because you're like, well, this unit is for the purpose of doing X. This is for doing Y. This is how I'm going to move around. And then you sort of adapt that macro to your specific opponent. So can you just sort of break down that macro for us?
So the most important part of the list for like what I'm trying to do is honestly the spawn.
Yeah.
And if somebody's not taking 3 units of spawn in their list, I absolutely recommend that you do. And basically, the spawn's objective are to open up my opponent's army for my better trades with the Berserker brick later in the game. And why I like the Berserker brick is because like with 6-inch pile and consolidate, and like in the charge, pile in, consolidate phase, you get a ton of mobility, and it can really shut down somebody's army in a single turn. So the spawn's job is to, like, my longest turns by far are just thinking about what the spawn are doing earlier in the game. Basically, their job is to get efficient early trades and then be able to consolidate back onto an objective. To basically, because I have the bleed on death stratagem, start the trade somewhere. I want my opponent to have less trash, less screening, and basically by turn 3, when I start, like, my expensive units are staged to be able to reach the middle of the board. But I want my opponent to be starting to use their better units to play the game, or at the very least be out of screens. And the easiest, I have a whiteboard for demonstration. Basically, the easiest way for me to set this up earlier in the game is just, spawn are only 2 models, but to make sure that I can reach, so we'll call this an objective right here, to make sure that I can consolidate back onto this objective. Even if my opponent's all the way over here, this is my opponent, even if I don't have 6-inch pylon and consolidate, what I'm doing is when I set up my spawn in the movement phase, my spawn are here, and the second one is as far back as he can be, like 2 inches, keep it coherency back here, to basically prevent this guy from having to base. So if you can base, you have to. So basically, he's going to go in and he's going to go in base-to-base contact. And because this guy legally, unless I rolled like an 11 on the charge, cannot physically make it around to base over here, he can sit right here. And I always make sure this is within 3 inches, or if I think I'm going to need a 6-inch pylon consolidate to get back, I'll take it just for like the early spawn efficiency. But basically, you want your spawn trading up, or even just trading with your opponent's trash and then consolidate and getting back onto the objective. Is basically the simplest way for me to explain like the early game strategy. And essentially in deployment, everything is deployed extremely aggressively. So let's say that I'm on tipping point here. Everything would be deployed up on the line that can scout, and it has the option to scout either safely back into the terrain here or aggressively. And this often makes your opponent think that, oh my god, I'm going to get like chased down, I'm going to get rushed down. You tell them the spawn can move 24 inches before a charge. Even 8-bound are moving 16 inches before a charge in like the first turn. So everything is always deployed as aggressively as I can. And then worst case scenario, it just scouts backwards into this terrain here because I have the movement. But basically, you just kind of want to set the tone for the game of like, okay, I'm going to be in the mid board. And then that usually puts your opponent on the back foot. And they just start making some like odd trades, sending out individual units, because you have to score to win the game. And if somebody just wants to send out nothing and wait for me, then I'm going to send out literally nothing and just bleed on objectives. But basically, I'm just setting up the entire game so that the screens are gone earlier. That's all I want. I'll give up an 8-bound squad for it, but by the time the Exalted come down and by the time I use the ever so important Berserker bricks, I want my opponent's trash mostly off the table. And I can talk about this a little bit, why that's important, like later in my games. But the Forge Fiends are helping to like kind of call some of the squads down a little bit so they're more manageable for the spawn, because spawn can definitely roll poorly. And then obviously if somebody's in the middle objective, my 8-bound are kind of staged up as far as they can, so I can use like the double base trick to try and get this back guy just within the 6 inches, so they have the +1 to hit against my opponent's more trashy units. But essentially, it's just really slow, thought out spawn trading is the most important part of like the first part of my game, for sure. And then obviously I might give up like 1 8-bound squad early. Maybe my Demon Prince with Lone Op is on my expensive. But essentially, my job is to try and put my opponent on the back foot of scoring. And that really, really sets up a go turn for turns 3 and 4. Yeah. Especially if you're able to play the slow training game efficiently, your opponent's going to get behind on points, and then they're required to come up and make those points later in the game. And then when they try to, you absolutely just like crush the game on their head. And it's worked literally against like WTC standard, like Team Canada players. I'm ranked number 1 in Canada right now for ITC, but I played number 2 on the weekend It worked there. It works consistently against good players as well. You just need to be very, very careful with your early game trading because your spawn are really efficient. And even if I go first, I'm likely not putting the spawn out right onto the middle objective just to start the trading there because I want them to be getting value by killing my opponent's units and then getting back onto the objectives.
Yeah, hell yeah. You should try. Yeah. You should get on Team Canada this year. It'd be great to see you over there.
I just don't have the time for practice games, and they require a lot of practice. I've had a few people talk to me about it.
It sounds like you don't need it.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It would be cool, obviously, but I don't have the requirement for time for practice games that they need.
Fair enough. Didn't mean to put you on the spot like that, but yeah, no, fair enough. But I think you're right with that macro strategy, and I think that what World Eaters do arguably better than anybody else is because we have that sticky on death stratagem. You can put something out, do an early trade, like they put their scouts on the objective, you send your spawn, you clap them off, and now they can't just shoot you off, which means they have to bring their army in, and then you have your counter charge set up. And that's just a really tricky problem for them to solve. Because if they send in their small units, by the time you've deleted all their small units, they're now struggling to score their secondaries. They're now struggling to screen you out and prevent your big scary stuff from hitting their big scary stuff. And I think that stratagem to sticky the objectives is like, it's almost a faction-defining stratagem.
Yeah.
Because without it, this whole trick doesn't work, right? Because without it, they just go, oh, cool, I'll just shoot you off the objectives and stay outside of your charge range. And then all of a sudden, you're not able to sort of pull them in closer. And I think one of the other things, like you were saying, deploying your scouts very aggressively, like your units that have scout, that's really good because, like you said, you can, if your opponent gets the first turn, you can scout yourself back behind safety. You can scout yourself behind a wall somewhere. But being able to posture that aggressive stance, it's like if you had a bunch of guns, your opponent has to deploy out of line of sight. Well, if you have a bunch of scouting fast melee, your opponent has to deploy really deep in their deployment zone. And that often means that their game plan gets disrupted because they might have taken a unit that has an 8-inch move and their plan is this unit deploys front and center so that if I draw area denial, I can send it out turn one. But they can't do that because you've got the faster units. If they deploy it front and center, you can just go in and take that unit out in your first turn. So they actually have to deploy it further back, and now as a result, they can't get that area denial turn one. They can't jump out and cleanse because in order to get on the objective, they might have to advance now, whereas they might not have planned for that. So I think World Eaters disrupt that early game probably better than most. And I look forward to hearing about how you executed that. Because obviously this sort of macro strategy, you do have to adapt it depending on your opponent. Some opponents are going to have a sort of a list that doesn't permit this. So, it'll be interesting to see how you went. So, 6 rounds. Who was your first opponent?
The first opponent was a gentleman called Frederick, and he was on Emperor's Children. And this is going to be a trend going through the tournament because, again, I have like literally one GW GT worth and then whatever games I have at this event worth of games with the new Codex.
Yep.
So it was my first time playing Emperor's Children in general, actually. I'm building my own Emperor's Children army, just as kind of like a fun like side hobby thing. But I'd never actually played against them before, but I knew the army decently well.
Yep.
It was a triple Prince build. And I basically won the game on turn one. Top of turn one, because he just put his Rhino in a little bit of a weird position. And in my first turn, I was able to use Forge Fiend shooting to clear off a squad of Tormentors. I was able to get a squad of Spawn back into a second squad of Tormentors that was strung out from his home. So I'd killed 2 Tormentors already. And then here's a Rhino that he had. And it was staged, like, let's say the GW equivalent would be like terrain layout 1. Like, I don't know if it's the same now, but the old terrain layout 1, where this is like his like big middle L. The Rhino is like basically the edge of his deployment here, like this, and where I'm search and destroy. And basically, what I did with the Rhino is I charged it with 8 bound. So that kind of shows you how close it was if I was charging it with 8 bound in the first turn on
Yep.
Search and Destroy. I charged it with 8 bound, and the 8 bound line basically right here. And then I charged it with a squad of spawn, and the spawn line basically right here. And my opponent has 2 infractor squads inside, 2 infractor squads with the lords, and these are very, very good units in Emperor's Children. So obviously, if he's out of them, it puts me in a lot better spot, especially because World Eaters in general have more stuff on the board than Emperor's Children. But basically, these squads, each squad tests differently. If they cannot get out within 3 inches, they have to get out within 6 inches. And obviously, if they get out within 6 inches, I do not have a 6-inch pylon consolidate up right now because I took, I believe, sustained and lethal.
Yep.
And then after I killed the infractor, then I popped like Fight on Death. But basically, I made sure I asked my opponent before I killed the Rhino and before I even got these spawn in, could you please get both of your squads out of the Rhino so I can see where they can go?
Yep.
And sure enough, one squad was able to fit within 5 up here, within 3 inches up here, and the other squad had to get out and fit 6 inches like behind here somewhere. Doesn't really matter. But basically, after these 8-bound killed the Rhino, these spawned because they hadn't activated, were able to pile in 3 inches, and they were both able to fight into the infractor squad. Obviously, they get the buffs from the 8-bound, and I popped the +1
AP.
AP here as well,
Yep.
which was free because my Prince was staged within 12 inches behind. And basically, in the first turn, I was able to kill 2 Tormentors, the Rhino, and the Infractor, the entire Infractor blob with the character. And my entire army is Fight on Death, and now I'm stood in front of him. And all he has access to is basically 1 squad of spawn, 1 squad of 8-bound, and 2 squads of spawn and 1 squad of 8-bound. And that's it. And it basically ended the game right off the bat because now I'm basically like I've trailed all the way over and I'm on his expansive. I'm on my own expansive. And it just puts him on the back foot, losing that squad almost immediately. So that was I believe the end score was like 94-34.
Oh wow!
But basically, I just put him on the back foot, like
Yeah.
immediately.
There's
And
nothing
if
worse.
somebody-
There's nothing worse
Yeah.
than when your opponent makes you fight them in your own deployment zone. Like what you've done
Yeah.
by going in like that, you're forcing this big fight to happen right in his home.
Yeah.
And as a result, how is he taking your expansion objective? He can't. He's too busy dealing
Yeah.
with all this.
Yeah, and again, normally I advocate for, especially with where new rules are. Normally, I advocate for like spawn trading and the entire army rotating around like the 12-inch Prince for like cheaper stratagems and playing very defensively until the go turn. But if somebody gives me that situation with the transport, the contents, and 2 squads of like his scoring battle line, I'm 100% gonna take it.
Yeah.
And I did it with only exposing like my Forge Fiends are way out of range for like noise marine shooting because they dealt with the squad that was just trying across the middle. So basically, I'm in a spot where I've killed that much, and all he can see is like essentially like 3 of my units, and 2 of them are like 80-point spawn units. So it basically just that alone immediately kind of ended the game.
Yeah. How did you deal with the Demon Princes? Because that -1 damage is a problem for World Eaters. What was your solution there?
To be honest, my Berserker blobs with lethal.
Yeah, that'll do.
Berserker blobs with lethal and the +1 AP were able to pretty easily put down a Prince from almost full health. I was using a lot of Forge Fiend shooting support, grenades where I could. This guy was running Peerless Blades, not Coterie, so he didn't have access to the Feel No Pain stratagem for 1 CP.
Yep.
And then basically, like 1 Forge Fiend shot goes through, it's still like 2 damage, gets it down to like 8 wounds, get a grenade in, or get like a tag shot in somewhere. But all your 3 damage is very, very valuable. And then just like the 1 wound, like the 1 damage lethal, really, really, really adds up, and that'll put it down for sure.
Yeah. And Khan himself being 3 damage, he's actually pretty effective into them.
I had so many people complain about Karn.
I had so
Literally,
I played a
what is this
tournament.
guy?
I played a tournament last weekend as well, and I also had almost every opponent complain about Khan because when Khan goes in with that sustained and lethals, he just like murders anything. And then when they finally
Yeah.
kill him, he gets back up on a 2-up, and then you tell him he's only 85 points, and they're so offended. But
You know,
yeah,
he did like 15 wins to a land fort when
yeah,
I was playing like when I was playing one of the WTC Team Canada players, like in this event, and
yeah, he's a monster.
it was I didn't even need it. It was so funny. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that was my first game.
Yep.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment, he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
Brutal.
And then second game was a World Leaders Mirror against a really nice gentleman called Sebastian. I think he follows his channel too because he talked about seeing me at the event, like in the comment section of like the last video. But really nice, kind of getting to chat World Leaders. But the only problem for me is if I lose the mirror, I never hear the end of it.
Yeah, I'm the same.
My friends. So I saw that like I drew the mirror and I'm like, oh shit. Like obviously like a fairly high stakes game.
Was
'cause you
was
really
he
don't wanna
also
lose
running
the bear
the
match.
warband and all that similar list, or
He was running Warband. He had a Mauler Fiend. He did not have Spawn in his list. And that was a
that's a problem.
and that was a big problem.
I actually think I'm going to
They
title this video "Are Spawn OP" because I think they
100%.
are. Yeah,
Honestly, like you match them up against any other armies, like early game trading piece or like skirmish pieces, and they like blow everything out of the water. Like
Yeah.
if you're not bringing 3 squads of Spawn, for the love of like, don't even talk to me about Goremongers. Like why are you why
Yeah.
are why are you paying for Goremongers unless you already have 3 squads of Spawn in your list, right?
yeah.
That's just my opinion. They are unbelievably good, and they kind of set up everything I want to do. Anyway, so I'm playing in the World Leaders Mirror. It's actually a very cagey game. Both of us are kind of rotating around our princes, and I happen to go first. And his probably biggest mistake in the game was he moved a squad of 8-bound like over on his expansive. Like he just scattered them up like behind terrain just so they can be shot by Forge Fiends. But they were in spawn charge range, and he was out of the 12-inch aura from the print, so he couldn't get -1 damage on them. But he had fight on death up, so I knew my spawn were probably going to die in the clapback. But I ended up trading a squad of spawn directly in the first turn for a squad of 8-bound, which I will take like 100 out of 100 times.
Yeah.
And basically just the spawn actually whiffed on his Goremongers by quite a lot. Like he still had, I think, 4 Goremongers alive, and that was kind of annoying for me because they just got onto his expansive. Then I had to dedicate like another squad to deal with that and start like the trading. But basically it was kind of this game of us dancing around each other. He moved his Mauler Fiend like basically up onto like my expansive is here. Here's WTC terrain. Like the terrain's like here, and here's the edge of the board. His Mauler Fiend, like here's the actual like terrain piece, and this is just the footprint. His Mauler Fiend's able to fit through here. So basically, my spawner like here and here, and my Forge Fiend is here. Basically, just like protecting it. It's on the objective, and I'm just move blocking the Mauler Fiend. So if he wants to commit the Mauler Fiend, it is just going to kill 2 spawn, and then I'm going to jump on it with Berserkers, or maybe I'll drop the Exalted Squad down. But it was a good game. That initial 8-bound trade kind of put him in a rough spot. He was making good decisions. Both of our movement phases were like immensely long. Mm-hmm. The kind of the straw that broke the camel's back towards the end of the game, which was just, it was so silly when it happened. But essentially, here is like his piece of terrain. Here's my deployment zone. There's a rhino here. And then I can't remember if he had exalted or something else back here. But here's the middle, and we are playing on, what is that mission called? It's the mission where like the deployments disappear, like the actual objectives disappear throughout the game. Supply drop. And so we want to hold the middle at the end.
Yeah.
And it's basically my turn 4. So I want this 15 points at the beginning of my turn 5, or it would be pretty easy for me to lose the game. So I charge up a squad of 8-bound up to here. Charge up a squad of 8-bound, and then as soon as they get close, he disembarks the Berserkers, which is perfect. And I have my Demon Prince right here. And basically my 8-bound charge, and they are here, here, and here. And I know he's going to Heroic Intervention. And my thought is, because I chained back the 8-bound far enough, if he rolls average on his Heroic Intervention, he has to base this bottom one. Like, he doesn't have enough models to be able to block himself out here, so he has to base this bottom one.
Which brings
and then it puts in a really, and then it puts in a really easy charge for the Demon Prince. And then this freaking guy rolls a 2. This convention, and I'm like, oh! so now like my whole plan's like falling apart around me. But my Demon Prince, I think it was like I needed like a 10 or something. He rolled boxcars on his charge and banked the 12-inch charge anyway. So it's if my plan on average comes together, and then something crazy happened, and then something more crazy happened. So the average happened again.
That always tends to be the way. Like, every time I'm rolling to hit, like, I'll roll with my spawn, and I'll roll like a 5 and a 6 for their random number of attacks. Yeah. And I'll be like, oh, you're in trouble. And then I'll roll like really good on the hit. Or I'll roll really good on the hit rolls as well. And I'm like, yeah, you are toast now. And then I just like won't wound with anything, and they'll pass all their saves. And I'm like, oh, that turned out to be just the average result. And I'm like, damn it, I was so excited.
That's the problem. If you start like talking shit halfway through an activation,
always save it till the end.
Always bite you. Yeah. But that was again, just using pile and consolidate rules to put him in charge range of myself.
Yeah.
And then it panned out in the end, and then I held the middle, and then he had his what was it, a Slaughterbound squad, or was it? I think it was a Demon Prince. He had his Demon Prince and the Mauler Fiend down in that bottom expansive that I discussed. And in the last turn, I just like insulated it with Jackals without charging, and that just like kept him out of the game. The end score was like 70-29, I think.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was fun playing the mayor, and it was fun to chat with him kind of about like lists. And Sebastian, if you're watching this, I really enjoyed our game, and I will definitely travel out to be able to run it back.
Hell yeah! Was the fights on death impactful in that game? Was there lots? Because that's every time I've played the World Eaters Mirror, it's often come down to whoever gets more of those fight on deaths.
We were just kind of accepting that, minus the Berserkers and like obviously the big stuff, anything you put in was kind of dying anyway.
Yeah. And
the fights on death were, both of us had fight on death up literally the entire game. And the fights on death were consistent. I'd say they were pretty average. And everything that was going into stuff that has fights on death, like 8-bound, and like when 8-bound went in, like you were expecting the 8-bound to die, like on the fights on, and it's basically just like trading like that all over the table.
Yeah.
But we basically played like a very castle-y game where we're both in the terrain pieces on the edge of our deployment zone until literally like turn 4.
Yeah.
Like neither of us wanted to engage the blob, because as soon as your opponent gets momentum in your turn, it turns very, very like poorly very quickly.
Yeah.
And obviously in Berserker Warband, you have access to a super cheap -1 damage, army-wide fight on death, and in general, it's just not worth like challenging that. And again, me having the spawn differential just allowed me to really put him on the back foot.
Yeah.
So he needed to start using those expensive units to do like all the funky stuff all over the table.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's probably 3 boxes of spawn in his cart on his GW store right now.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's a really awesome round 2. The mirror match is always a ton of fun. How did you go into your round 3?
So basically, my job is after I get my golden ticket early in the season in singles, I try to help my friends get their golden tickets.
Yeah.
And as much as possible, we try to avoid each other. But I ended up playing one of my buddies here. And his name's Adam Green. He's on, he's been with Team Canada a couple times. And he was playing his Votann, which is his main army. And he is currently ranked 2nd in ITC in Canada. So it was unfortunate when I paired it to my buddy. So I'm like, oh, I was supposed to be like clearing the way to help you come down to Atlanta, because he really, really, really wants to go. But we got the unfortunate pairing, and we saw it come up, and the whole group chat that was following the whole tournament was like, oh. But it was a good game. Again, good early game trading. He had 2 squads of 6 bikes. He had 2 squads of the Berserks in the land, like 2 land forts. And then the rest were just, well, the squad that could overwatch on 5s as well, but they only had 18-inch range. So the bonus is they're Thunderkin. So the bonus is if they're shooting anything anti-monster vehicle, then usually it's a Forge Fiend, and usually they're in Forge Fiend overwatch range, which is pretty funny. The Forge Fiends are huge for this matchup because a lot of his ranges are shorter. So if he wants to come in and shoot my Forge Fiends with his bikes from the side, the bikes are literally just going to get overwatched every time they come in on the table around me. And I think on average, I pick up like 2.5 bikes, which is not nothing, right? And if I spike, he's losing like 4 or 5 bikes out of 6, which is just something that he really doesn't want.
Yeah.
So he had to play very carefully with his bikes. And basically, I killed his early game trash, and then his land forts had to move up. And then I had gotten a spot where I could charge 1 land fort completely with the Khorne squad, and the other land fort completely with the Mo squad and a squad of 8-bound. And I did the same thing where the squad of 8-bound, like, here's the land fort. Here's the big old land fort, which is a lot bigger than a Rhino. My squad of the 10-man was here. And then I basically, this was the table edge here. I basically said, hey, Adam, could you please get out your, after I made the charge, could you please get out all of your berserks so I can see like where they can go if you were to blow up? And I made sure that he could get out within 3 here. And then I just lined up my 8-bound here because they started back here. Obviously trail back so not all of them can base because that's just good Warhammer. And then right here. And basically everybody could get within 3 inches to be able to swing into the berserks afterwards. And he used... I completely forgot he had a shoot back strat after I shoot him. So I shot this with a Forge Fiend just to take like 3 or 6 wounds off. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to spend 2 CP and shoot you back. And I'm like,
whoops.
Because I played his Votann before, but we didn't even like talk about it in the pregame. And he said it, and I'm like, oh man, if you actually kill this Forge Fiend here, I'm actually gonna be pretty salty. You didn't bring it up before I shot it, but he didn't kill the Forge Fiend, and then he was out of CP, so he couldn't AOC. So I'm like, this is what you get. Yeah, yeah. So it was and then obviously with sustained lethal, and I popped the +1 AP here on this one because I wanted to make sure it died. Because the other one just hit the Karn squad, so it didn't have like the 8-bound ready to go into the berserks.
Yeah.
So the other one, if the land fort dies, great. This one, I need the land fort to die so the 8-bound can go into here.
Yeah.
Or else I'm losing 2 units for almost no reason. And then, yeah, basically killed the land fort, and then the land fort actually blew up, and then killed one of the 8-bound, which was a shame. But I was able to kill like 8 out of 10 of the berserks, and they just picked me up and they hit me back.
Yeah.
And then I don't actually think I took sustained that round because I wanted to fight on death for the turn that I had the berserks on the table. So I took lethal and fight on death, and then my whole army is just fighting on death. And then basically the berserks, they like the bikes swing around and they shoot into this squad. They obviously like Votann bikes with +1 AP and like sustain 2 are going to pick up the squad of 10. But I still have a Forge Fiend here. I still have another squad of 8-bound kind of hanging around. And when the bikes went into the Forge Fiend that I'd put over here. So when the berserks went into the guys in the middle of the Karn squad, Karn killed like 9 out of 10 of them.
Yeah.
And he still lived with his squad with like the fight on death. But Karn was still alive on like 2 wounds. So he still had like the eligibility to stand back up. And after that, all he had on the table was essentially his 2 bike squads. And I still had my Ingress squad that was chilling, which is the Exalted squad with the Slaughter Band, which ingresses literally every single game. And then Karn stood in front of his bikes. So as soon as Karn moves, then he overwatches, then Karn stands back up, and then Karn gets the charge anyway.
Yeah.
So immediately after that one turn of me blowing up the forts, getting into the berserks, picking out most of the berserks, and then I'd shot Forge Fiends into his Thunderkin up on the top side of the table before, and then he moved his there was 3 of them left because he rolled pretty well. He moved them within range to be able to shoot the Forge Fiend, and I just killed the rest in Overwatch. After that all happened in the same turn. It was turn 3, and we literally just said, okay, that's the game. Like we can call it now. Less about mobility in this game. The only thing was obviously like piling in through after I killed the land fort into the berserks. Nothing crazy fancy like I did in a couple of my other games. But yeah, basically that was kind of the shtick. I can't really think of anything else like monumental that happened in the game. I missed a couple of early 7-inch charges with spawn, so I lost a couple of spawn earlier than I would like to. But realistically, it is what it is, and they were able to touch objectives to like start the trading anyway. So even if they miss their charge, one of them still touching the objective, so I'm still getting something out of it, and I'm not just losing a unit for no reason.
Yeah, that's one of the things with
the
spawn is you want to make sure that when you are sending them out,
Yeah.
you want to trail one back in the movement phase to be on an objective so that if you do fail that charge, at least you're still
Yep.
on the objective for stickies. I see a lot of people, what they do is they just go, cool, I'm going to move my maximum distance with both spawns so that they're both going to get
Yep.
in and do their charge. That's almost never the right play. You're almost always better off moving one of them its full distance, whichever one's closest, and then the other one trailing back so that you can do things like what you're talking there, where you can charge things and make it so that only one of them has to end within base, giving the other one freedom to move in whichever sort of direction it wants to, providing it ends closer. And also lets you do the sort of objective play as well.
Yep. Everything should be strung back within reason. Obviously, you want to be close enough so everything can still pile in and fight. But it gives you a lot more mobility if it's kind of like spread out on the board. So spawn are really, really easy to do that because as soon as that spawn is stacked, here's my opponent, here's my spawn. If my other spawn has to base, it's over here. If my other spawn didn't have to base because it was far enough back and it was staggered like it should be, it's back to here. And now I have an entire another spawn's base worth of movement to be able to get back onto the objective or touch another opponent's squad. And basically, because you have limited units, you really want to be kind of min-maxing all your pile-in and your consolidate and like every movement you can. So it's pretty critical that you kind of get on top of kind of setting yourself up in movement like that.
Yeah, because we have so few units, what you want to try to do is you want to try to use your spawn and your 8 bound and stuff like that to simultaneously go and kill somebody, but also like use the consolidation to get back onto an objective marker. So it's like instead of sending one unit out to kill and one unit out to hold an objective, you're kind of sending one unit out to try and do both. Go kill that thing and then pile back onto the objective and hold it. That's the way to
Yep.
get like extend the value of your units.
Yep.
You know, so that it feels like we have twice as many units as we actually do because they're filling multiple roles simultaneously, which is a very hard thing to do. But
Yep.
when you're able to get yourself in positions where you can, it's immensely rewarding.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. So it's a shame that you knocked your buddy out. But
You know what? The silver lining is he finished 5-1. He finished in 3rd or 4th place, and there were 3 golden tickets to this event.
Oh yeah, nice.
1st, 2nd, and best overall. I already had a golden ticket, so his one actually got passed down. So he got a golden ticket, and our other buddy that we traveled over with as well won best overall. So it was everybody we sent got ticketed, and so it was actually like a very, very successful event for our team.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
Good to hear. So it's even better to hear that you not only did you get to play into your mate, but you also didn't cost him the main thing that you were traveling for, which is
Yeah.
It's
It'd be a
great
plane
stuff.
ride back. Yeah. Yeah. And then
All right, cool. Round
So-
4, I guess.
yeah, so I was playing Death Guard. This was kind of like a stat check, like Demon's Death Guard list.
Yep.
So basically, I don't remember every in and out of the list. This gentleman actually, his name was Justin. I went last year with him to Worlds. He's from a different province, so I just like met him down there. But he was with one of my other buddies that I know kind of from that same province. But he went to Worlds, so he's a pretty good player. Running Rodigus and Guo in whatever the plague
Nurgle Demon
Legion. Yeah, Nurgle Demonkin. Yeah. But essentially, like I talked to him about this after the game as well. And he's just tried to deal with everything at once. And by him spreading out and trying to deal with everything at once, I could kind of isolate a side of the board and deal with everything going on over here. He mismanaged his CP a little bit. So we're not great into Guos and Rodigus in general. Because if they can interrupt for 2 CP, they'll just pick up a second squad or whatever you charged in there. But I put him in a position where he basically wanted to rapid ingress to save something, and that took him down from 2 CP to 1 CP.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I saw that, I was able to charge in a squad of 8 bound and a 10-man and the character into like whoa. And that on average with lethal sustained does kill it. Which was good. So I was able to kind of like just isolate parts of the board. And then I was saving my CP because I don't need to spend it for extra AP. I was saving my CP for -1 damage. So basically when the Death Shroud come in, the Death Shroud just bounced like clean off me.
Yeah.
So after killing the Guo, basically I popped the fight on death. And it was just consistent trades. He made kind of a mistake when, again, it was a Berserker blob. So I haven't really had to use my Berserker blobs for a crazy amount in the games before this. But basically, the Berserker blob, like with Khorne, was able to reach out and touch like 3 units in combat. One of them was a unit of Plague Bearers. One of them was a character that I can't advance and am within 9 inches of. And the other one was, I forget what the other one was. But basically, like once Khorne had kind of like expanded out, obviously he can't shoot it with anything. He can't use his drones. He can't, or it's just going to get into combat and be able to fight before he does. And just having that at 2 spots on the board with the 2 Berserker squads, which I will get more into the Berserker squad tech later. Basically just ended the game. I forget what the final score was, but I think it was like a 45 or 50 point differential. I was just able to deal with his big stuff, like isolate it, and deal with it on separate parts of the board instead of trying to deal with everything at once. We can kill big stuff. We just need to put our opponent in a position where they let us kind of like focus on it without much like repercussion. So I was able to get in 2 squads and then not have the threat of those 2 squads getting picked up immediately by like my opponent, the rest of my opponent's army. Yeah, it was a pretty straightforward game. Just again, good spawn early game trading. He had a couple beasts of Nurgle, which are pretty easy for Forge Fiends to pick up, unless you watched my stream game in the semifinals last weekend, in which case, for the love of themselves, a Forge Fiend cannot pick up a single beast of Nurgle, which is math. But after learning from losing last weekend in the semifinals, every time I lined up to shoot a Forge Fiend at a Beast of Nurgle, my Rhino could also see the same Beast of Nurgle because they have 7 wounds. So if I happen to put it on 1 wound, then my Rhino could also shoot it before it went back up to full at the end of the phase. So I do learn. I am like capable of learning, despite popular belief. But yeah, it was nothing else really remarkable in that game. Just kind of consistent Warhammer, and it was funny because I wore my Worlds jersey from last year for Team Canada when I showed up, and he was wearing the same one, and I was like, oh right, I saw you last year. So it's kind of like a weird moment where I didn't realize he was at the event. But yeah, it was good chatting, and then unfortunately he actually paired into Adam like right afterwards or something. So it's a kind of back to back. Number 1 and 2 ITC in the country is pretty rough.
That is rough.
Yeah. But yeah. So that was that. And now we're in battle point pairings for the event. So I'm going to a gentleman called Logan, who's playing Tau. He won the event last year. I hadn't traveled since 2022, so I don't know how many people were there last year or whatever. But he was the reigning champ, and generally he's considered to be one of the, if not the best player in this province.
Yep.
So I know it's going to be a good game. But this is where the specific Berserker tech kind of comes in. So basically, we deploy. We'll say this is the board here. Here's the center objective. Here's my home. Here's my expansive. There's like a piece of terrain here. He's got all this stuff over here. Here's like there's a centerpiece like here, centerpiece here. WTC, I don't actually know the WTC layouts off the top of my head. Yeah, but basically this is the shtick. Like there's the other objectives. Basically, he has a Mont Collis, which is very, very good at like alpha striking. And because Riptides are so tall, these smaller WTC ruins, I have to be really careful of where I put my berserkers, or he can just shoot me inside the ruin.
Yeah.
So my squad starts in the Rhino. My Karn squad starts in the Rhino, and they're somewhere staged up behind terrain, like over here. But my Mo squad's all the way back here. And that's pretty important for later in the game. So I want to find some way to kind of unlock this Mo squad to actually play the game. But basically, just early game trading. He has a crap ton of Kroot. He is like the 20-man squad of Kroot with a reactive move, which is basically, he played my buddy playing Orcs that I traveled with, who won best overall. He played him before, and basically just like my buddy could not break through his screens.
Yep.
And he just insulates all of his units inside of like this kind of wall of Kroot.
Yeah.
But basically, I was able to, in the first turn, this would have been second turn, I picked up Piranha and one of the smaller squads of Kroot that infiltrated with Spawn, and they got back onto this objective. And then the Piranha that I killed is somewhere, I don't know, somewhere up here. I killed him with another squad of Spawn. And basically, he does the same thing. This line moves up slightly, and then same like trading pieces. And then I charge in my squad of Spawn over here. My squad of Spawn are into this big long line of Kroot. I charge in a squad of 8-bound here. and I charge in another squad of 8-bound over here. And basically, what I'm doing is this squad right over here attacks first. And I took 6-inch paladin consolidate here because I felt like it was important. And I took sustained because Riptides are only T9. His Riptide has stood like back here, big old scary Riptide guy. But I start with these spawn, and these spawn pick up probably just above half the squad, and he cannot pull them from here. He cannot pull them from here, where I immediately have the 6-inch that I want anyway into the Riptide, and it can occur with multiple squads. So he has to pull from over here, and then the squad of 8-bound is able to pick up the rest of this, and then this squad, before they attack, are able to pile into the Riptide. And they manage to, with the help of a couple shells from a Forge Fiend, they're able to pick up the Riptide in one activation. And this kind of puts my opponent a little bit on the back foot, but he can deal with he can deal with this. He can clear off the board, and he kind of reset. But now he doesn't have any screening pieces. He has one squad of like crude hands down here on like this objective. And then apart from that, he has like 2 squads of breachers, a transport, a sky ray that's like back here, and then 2 riptides and a piranha. And this is the spicy part. So he moves his piranha, like his riptide is staged like back here somewhere. So basically, so I can come out and deal with whatever comes to the middle. He can just score end of turn scoring. He moves his piranha onto the middle, right? And my demon prince is chilling right here. So what I do is we'll say this is actually, I can't really draw on it if it's that big. Piranha's not that big.
Piranha's definitely not that big.
Without making it look like a dick. We'll say. I was going to draw the outline of a piranha. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, not great. So basically, this demon prince, this one here that I had behind this piece of terrain, it comes out and it charges into here, and he is basing the piranha right here, taking up as much space as possible. This Mo squad, it has a rerollable advance, obviously. I think I rolled like a 5 on my first one, so I didn't want to reroll it. But basically, they're moving out, and they're moving 13 inches. And they are basically, they're going up to here. So now my Mo squad is in the game. And basically, this is like the most important part of why I like the double Berserker brick. These guys, now they charge after this big guy has had his charge already. They charge and they roll like I think like an 8 or a 9. But basically, everybody that can base is basing here. They're all basing around here. Basically, so I have as many units as possible that cannot base, and everybody else that cannot base is running directly this way towards the Riptide. So basically,
I see what's about to happen.
so basically, the Riptides now within 6 inches of these guys can run directly towards the Riptide as long as they're closer to the declared target. Then when they started, they don't need to be as close as possible, as long as everything's been based. Into the Riptide, I'm able to get the 2 big glaives and Khorne and nothing else. And the Riptide's eaten a couple wounds from a Forge Fiend, and it's down at like 6 or 9 wounds. But basically, Demon Prince kills this guy, and now this entire squad is, when they pile into the Riptide. So basically, my Mo squad has moved 13 inches here. They have 8-inch base move, don't forget, with advance and charge. They moved 13 inches here. Then they rolled like a 9 on the charge. So then they moved 22 inches. And then they've moved 6 inches to get into the Riptide. So now they've moved 28 inches. And then after I kill the Riptide with Khorne, I'm able to touch his transport. I'm able to touch one of his smaller squads. I forget what it was. I'm able to get onto this objective here. And basically now he's a shooty army, and I'm in combat with 3 different things. my Berserker squad's moved a total of 34 inches in a single turn. I've stopped him from scoring primary on this objective, and now I'm in combat all the way back here. And if he cannot kill this in one activation, then he's immediately in combat again.
Yeah.
And this is in like the bottom of turn 3, bottom of turn 4, and I'm already denying this. And then later in the game, the Khorne squad from up here goes down and does exactly the same thing to a squad of like stealth suits and breachers like later on the next turn. So basically just using the mobility and using like knowledge of the movement phase, I'm basically able to declare a charge on a Riptide that was like literally 14 inches away at the beginning of my charge phase, just by using like movement knowledge. And that's why I really like the Berserker breaks, is because you can do stuff like this and it allows for like player expression.
Yeah, 100%.
And just having like a 10-man, 11-man, like 2 wounds a guy, 3-up save. You can go to ground if you want. OC2, being able to like just like blurt out in your opponent's deployment zone is immediately like game ending. Like when I played in the finals of I guess for 3rd place at the Super Major last weekend, I did it to Team Canada Death Guard player. I did it to obviously like Logan in this scenario. I've done it in one of my games as well last week. As soon as it happens and you pull it off, people don't see it because they're not close enough for you to charge, but you're not gotching somebody. It's literally like basic core rules Warhammer.
Yeah.
And you're just able to like your mobility with the 6-inch is absolutely insane. And that's why it's important to string this out, because if these guys are all, instead of being straight out here, if they're all blobbed up here, then way more guys can base. And even if I roll high, then lots of guys are coming around and basing all the way on this side. And then that makes this a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
But essentially that's how I move like basically 34 inches in a turn, kill a Riptide, tag half of my opponent's army that's left, and like deny the primary. Like doing stuff like that, just immediate. If you're playing like the rest of the game is like clean Warhammer, immediately ends the game.
Yeah, it's a true world ender of a maneuver. It sounds like the 6-inch consolidate was very impactful in this match, because there was a few instances there where like opponents are typically used to going, oh, okay, I'm going to put my unit here and then 4 inches in front of them, and I'm going to put my screening unit. You know, that's the standard, but that doesn't work in World Eaters because we charge 2 units in and we 6-inch pile into you. So people have to go, well, so I need to leave 7 inches between my 2 units. But that's such a big gap that often that means that they're not in the positions that they want to be in. So I think leveraging that 6-inch is so big.
And lots of stuff only has like less than a 7-inch movement. So people are potentially taking themselves out of the game by keeping themselves out of it.
Yeah.
So to be honest, just by having access to that rule, you're making people play worse Warhammer anyway and put themselves in worse like positions, even if you don't get to use it.
Yeah. And you're forcing them to play a very counterintuitive game. Like they actually have to bring out a very specific set of skills that they probably haven't refined, because it only really applies when versing World Eaters specifically. So you as the World Eaters player have refined that skill of how to optimize your charges to use those pile-ins to be able to get touch things that you normally wouldn't be able to touch, because you do it every game. But they only do it when they're playing World Eaters, which might be once every 2 or 3 events for some people. So they just don't have the experience in it. And like you said, it's not a gotcha, because it's not like you've got some hidden rule that they don't know about. At the start of the battle round, you roll it up and you're like, cool, I can 6-inch pile in and consolidate. Here's my little marker.
Yeah.
And if they haven't got rock solid fundamentals, you're absolutely right. And I think you are right in that the Berserker unit, because this was the main thing that I was skeptical about when looking at your list, was that second Berserker unit. Because in my experience, they've just hit like wet noodles. They haven't been lethal enough. But you are right that they take the most advantage of that 6-inch pilot and consolidate. They really get miles out of it, because it, like you said, if you've got 2 spawn and they have a 6-inch pilot and consolidate, cool, one of them makes base contact, but the other one he can't really go that far because he's tethered by that coherency. If you got 10 berserkers and only 2 of them can make base contact, the rest of them can sort of swing around like a flail with Khan and his 2 big axes on the end, and you swing them into the main thing that you want to hit, which is the thing that was out of charge range. But because of the, I think that's a really important skill for people to learn. I might even do a separate video just really zeroing in on how to
Yeah.
execute that maneuver, because it is somewhat complex, somewhat counterintuitive, and I think when World Eaters players really figure it out, that's going to be a big one for people to learn. So it's good to see
Yeah. Well,
you demonstrating that it works.
yeah. Well, people have to score primary, right? And then in most of my games, if it's a close game, and it comes down to it, I'm pulling something off like that, and it's immediately like handshake, let's score it out.
Yeah.
Because you have to score. So you're putting units in the middle, and with a double charge with one of my, like, whatever I'm putting in the middle, either if it's an 8-bound or usually the Prince, and then my Berserker squad, I'm only able to make base with so much because I strung things out, like I said before, keep myself out of making base. And then basically I'm getting into combat with stuff right in the middle of my, like, the edge of my opponent's deployment zone, when they started like all the way back from, like, even in my deployment zone at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I'm declaring a charge on a Riptide that's like literally 26 inches away from me, which is like impossible to charge, but it's like that actually like consistent with a 6-inch pile and consolidate. Just the, again, the double charge, and then being able to use the pile in and the 10 squad, well, the 11 squad, to be able to climb and get wherever I want with that. Having that in your deployment zone, if you don't have the volume to kill it in one activation, and it's been able to tag things, which it likely is going to with a 6-inch pile and consolidate, is crippling. Like, it is.
Yeah.
People will spend 2 turns trying to get themselves out of it in a 5-turn game, and I have 2 of those squads.
Yeah.
And if you can put both of those squads into your opponent, like, in the same game, it is wild. But basically, that's why I spend the early game trying to deal with screens. I'm trying to deal with early game skirmish pieces, just so everything they're touching has value now. And that's my job as a player. Use my player skill to use my trash to clean up your trash better and put you on the back foot. Putting somebody on the back foot and scoring is like the icing on the cake for that. But essentially, I'm just trying to make room for all my Berserker plays, because they are the corner of my list. And in the same turn, like the Exalted 8-bound are coming down with the Slaughter Round, and people just can't deal with that. Like they can't deal with everything at once, and if they can, then they're going to be out of scoring for too long, because every time my Berserkers come in and pull off a maneuver like that, with that giant blob of OC, you're getting denied your primary as well. And now you have to come out, somehow kill the stuff that I've put on the middle in my expansive, and deal with it like the 10 Berserkers that are on your expansive. It's like it's literally not happening.
Yeah.
That's why I love the double Berserker break. It's just like that maneuver is such just pretty Warhammer to watch. Whenever, like, I'm watching him and somebody pulls off, it's so easy to do as well once you get a handle on it.
Yeah.
But it's just extremely good, clean, just well played, like, fundamental Warhammer, and that just sets the tone as a melee player, and allows you to better use like the Forge Fiends and all the new abilities we have if you have kind of like those fundamentals nailed down. That's the number one thing that I could advise to learn. And if you could make a kind of a video like talking through it, I think it would help people a lot. Honestly, it's a little unfortunate, because if the win rate gets too high, then we're gonna get nerfed. So don't make the video.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna drop this, and then all of a sudden, Spawn are gonna get nerfed, and everyone's gonna blame us. But fair enough.
Spawn should get nerfed.
They should.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They're not. So 8-bound should go down a little bit, both variants.
Yeah.
Forge Fiend should go up and Spawn should go up. Berserkers at 180 is still pricey, but I know I'm not really advocating for a Berserker buff when I'm bringing 2 squads with them.
Yeah.
And I'm like 14-1 in like tournament games with them right now. Yeah. But yeah, so that was my round 5. I think that was like a 25 or 30 point differential in the end of that one. Again, I have a team event later in the fall, so I'm just kind of practicing getting differentials.
Yeah.
And then I played into Tyranid Monster Mash, like an assimilation swarm in my last game.
Okay.
Lots of high toughness data sheets.
Mm-hmm.
I played a very, very patient, slow game. This game's actually on stream somewhere on YouTube. So if anybody wants to go watch it, I don't know if I can find it or not. But it's somewhere. And basically he has 2 1 Tyrannifex, 2 Exocrines. He has a Tyrant squad with the Tyrant Guard that have fight first and a free heroic intervention.
Okay.
He has all the fights first, like Lictors and stuff. He has Pyrovores. He has Maliceptors. So it's like everything he needs to deal with the World Eaters. But my early game trading, again, you're going to hear me just rail on early game trading, because I believe that the best thing you can learn in Warhammer is your first 2 turns.
Yeah.
And everything else is just kind of like reactionary, like chess. But if you have really good fundamentals and kind of like a good game plan, depending on the army type you're playing into, for your first 2 turns that you can learn and improve, it's like it sets you up for success. And even at top tables, like I don't really stress, because again, it's, as we mentioned in our last video, kind of turn by turn. I know my fundamentals and I'm putting myself in a good spot. I didn't really overextend. I didn't really try and reach out and do the, oh, well, if I killed this, it would be nice, or I'm just going to get picked up. And he is bottom of turn scoring. I'm like taking hold. And I'm probably not going to table him. And it ended up being a 2-point game in the end, because his dice were so hot. Like I normally don't complain about dice, but it was good. It wasn't like, oh my god, this guy's cheating, but it was like I was handing him like 3 saves from my Slaughterbound that were on 6s into a monster with like 4 wounds left, and he rolls like 3 6s, and I'm like, oh wow. And then it's just able to like pick up other squads. And yeah, but the main takeaway from this game was, so he had this is the center objective.
Yep.
Here. This is 2 big pieces of WTC terrain. He had his big fights first squad. Here, I'll kind of go over this first. So here is the, what was, I think, yeah, it was a Death Leper here. His fights first squad was all the way over here. Well, I say all the way, they're like literally 4 inches from this. Here's the Tyrant, the big Tyrant. Basically, I want to stay out of combat with this. So on this side of the board, I have a Forge Fiend, my 10-man with the Mo, and up here I have Khorne, my Demon Prince, Berserkers, 8 bound, so on and so forth. Basically, what I do, and this is the move that kind of won the game for me. Forge Fiend moves up. He's got like a 7-inch charge right now, and because this guy's here, I know that I can shoot it just fine, and that he's pinned here because the character's right here.
Yep.
Basically. So 2 Forge Fiends unload into this squad. I think they kill 3 Tyrant Guard. And then basically my Forge Fiend charges this guy. So, and why my Forge Fiend charges that guy is because then he can't pile in and fights first and everything I have over here.
Yep.
And then I have my Demon Prince. Big Demon Prince comes up to here. And then I have Khorne. And Khorne and his guys all charge just over here, staying out of combat over here. And if he wants to pile in with these 2, that's fine. They're like 1 damage each. I don't really care. But basically, this now, once I deal with this with the Demon Prince, and this is dead, then I can pile in and I can deal with all the fights first stuff.
Yeah.
So basically what I do is I use my vehicles and maybe sometimes like a trashy unit, or if I have to sacrifice like a unit of 8 bound, if I fight an death active or something, I will. But you tag part of the fight first unit. So then basically, even if I were to charge over here, I'm basing as much as I can. And this is really the only threat to my unit here. The other guys are just very tanky. He has to fight here through into this guy. He cannot fight into my Berserkers. But because I've left myself completely out and I've charged over here, once this is dead to the Demon Prince, which it will definitely kill him, unless something really weird happens, then I can get my pile and I get all my swings in here. So basically, Forge Fiend lives on, I don't know, like 6 wins. This dies, and Khorne and his 10 come in, and before the rest even swings, Khorne kills like everything but the Tyrant, and then he just picks the Tyrant up. And basically, aside from that, it's just really, really slow-paced scoring Warhammer. He rolled really, really hot on some of his monsters on his expansive when I put my Exalted squad down there. So my Exalted squad like bounced hard. which was not great because he had like 0 AP, 2 damage melee, and he picked up basically half my Exalted squad in like both turns that he swung into them. And I'm like my rolls on 3-ups were awful, and his rolls on 6-ups were like unbelievable. And I'm like, oh, I was feeling comfortable, and like I had a grasp on the whole game. And then he had like the one turn of like rolling pretty well, and he played good Warhammer. But we're both playing with intent, and I kind of walked him through everything that I was doing. Surprisingly, it was his first GT. I'm gonna find his name on my phone real quick because I want to give him a shout out for being a really good opponent. His name was David Bear, Boer, Bear. But it was his first GT. But because of like the movement fundamentals and everything, like he messaged me afterwards. He was like, okay, like that was a like different level of Warhammer that like I've never like really seen before. And I taught him about like the pilot and the fights first and stuff like that. And I said that him leaving it in charge range of my Forge Fiend was like a huge mistake that it's not like apparent that you don't really think about. But just having the knowledge to work around fights first and use your pylons to avoid combat. And I need to charge it because if I don't and I just charge a different unit with the intention of piling in, then he's just going to heroically intervene and then my squad like dies anyway. But we won that, and then he had a lot left at the end. Like I scored 15 on my primary after having that Khorne squad in the middle for the next turn. But he scored 15 on the end, and it brought it to a very, very close game. But he had basically everything he needed to deal with the world leaders. I bounced, unfortunately, in a lot of the big stuff when I went in. But it was, just kind of that one play with the fights first in the middle. And then on my expansive at the bottom, I still had my entire 10-man with Mo, just kind of keeping that clear because it was sticky and he didn't really want to move on to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the event. I can't really.
That last game, it sounds like it's like almost the perfect way to end the event, right? Because you want sort of the big boss battle at the end, so to speak. And it sounds like his list had all of the tools. So you're like, okay, I'm up against it. This is going to be really hard. And it sounds like it was the player expression that you were able to sort of bring yourself into the game by using all of these tricks that we've been discussing the whole time. And it's also one of those ones where it's like over the course of a 6-round event, there is going to be at least one instance where you roll bad at the same time as them rolling good, you know? Like it's going to happen eventually, right? And it's probably going to happen in the other way around at some stage as well. You're going to roll really well and your opponent's going to roll really poorly. But the last thing you want is for that to happen in the final. You know, you want one of your early games, you get dice there, but it's fine because you're in a less experienced player or it's a less, impactful situation. But having that happen on that final game must have been pretty intense.
Like my blessings, it was the first time I ever took reroll charges. Because my first 2 turns of blessings, I didn't roll any 4-ups, like whatsoever.
Yeah.
And everything, even with favorite on the board, like it was, I've never like not had what I wanted. And like it was, God did not want me to have that game. But we pulled it together, which was good.
I actually had a very similar interaction in a game a few months ago, just after the book had came out, where I was playing into Eldar and he had Banshees with Autarchs in it with that fights first. And I had a similar trick where basically what I did is I charged a unit that was like 12 inches away. I've got my Berserkers over here. I've charged this unit, but I've done it in such a way with the charge move that I could swing Khan and his unit around to be down near here, but I made sure I stayed outside of 6 inches so they couldn't heroically intervene. And then I activate my unit, pile in 6 inches, hit them, wipe out the Banshees. And my opponent was just like, he was gobsmacked. He was just like, wow, that's crazy. And I think the way that you can use the core mechanics of the game to get around those data sheet abilities, a lot of people look at the fights first and they think that data sheet ability just is a hard counter to World Eaters. And it is if you're an inexperienced player with the World Eaters. If you know the tricks like making sure that you charge their character so that the character has to fight this unit, now you can sort of hit them with your berserkers and you're not too stressed. Things like that are really important skills, because fights first is becoming increasingly common, and if you don't have the tricks in your toolkit to deal with it, you're going to find those games real miserable. So
I think that there's a big knight enhancement now in like Chaos Knights with fights first.
it's a big
Do not
problem.
ask me about the solution for that.
It's
I do not know.
So,
yeah.
because the challenge with that in particular for those playing along at home is, if it's a big knight, you can't like base contact half of the unit with something that you want to die. Like if they've got like a big unit of like Marines that all have fights first, you can go, cool, I'm going to throw Jackals in, I'm going to base contact every model, and then I'm going to throw the Berserkers in from an angle, and now only the guy that's within base contact of the Berserkers can fight them. But when the whole unit is just one base, that one base can fight your whole Berserker unit, and it's very, very difficult to get around. So that's kind of, and that same detachment with the fights first enhancement also has -1 damage, which is a real problem. And it has sticky objectives with OC5, which is a real problem for World Eaters, because a lot of our early trades, a lot of our sort of pieces are, 3 Outbound is 3 OC, 2 Spawn is 2 OC, a Forge Fiend is 3 OC. So if they sticky an objective, it's like, God, we now have to send like 3 units just to de-sticky something. Yeah, that detachment's going to be an interesting one.
I think the solution for fights first is, you have your -1 damage. She'd basically have to charge it with the Berserkers and a different squad that the sweep wasn't great into. So because he can't strike and sweep, so you'd want to throw a grenade. You'd have to get some Forge Fiend shooting to be able to bring it into like a reasonable range, like even if it's down at like 15, 16 wounds. And then when he gets to fight first, you have, if your prince is in there, that's great. So you have access to 1 CP -1 damage. So then he has to choose between a strike or a sweep. And then he's not going to sweep into the prince, and he's not going to strike into the berserkers. Then it's either one or the other. And if you have fight on death active, then it'll help push through like some of the lethals that you wanted. But I think that's basically the play that you have to do. But just, you have to kind of put your opponent in a position where they have to use that knight, and you can kind of focus on it. And then you could do stuff like that where it's like, well, you have to choose between a strike or a sweep. So I'm going to give you an option where both are not like perfect, and then you use your -1 damage where it's applicable. And then just good luck with that one. But I think that in general, you only need to kill 3 out of 5 big knights to kind of win on primary. And it's a scoring game, and what they are not great at is like secondaries and scoring. So as long as you're consistent with your secondaries, I haven't even looked into whether fixed would be a consideration or not.
It can be,
but they're not going to be crazy difficult to outscore. They're going to get a lot of primary, and you have to kind of take some primary losses on the chin, especially now with challenger cards. It's not the end of the world. And just try and outscore them.
Yeah, the only other trick that you can do to get around it is, if they have 2 knights that are even close to each other, they don't even have to be that close, but if they've got 2 knights on the board, you can throw like your Jackals or something, or a Rhino or a Forge Fiend, like literally anything, into the fights first guy. Then you charge the one near him and do the same thing as what I was saying with the Banshees, where you swing around. And that way he can't heroically intervene because he's been tagged by your Forge Fiend or your whatever, your Jackals that you've thrown into him. And then he activates, he kills your Jackals, you don't care. Then you can activate your unit, pile into him, and then hit him. So there is a few different ways you can do it, but it's going to be a tricky one. The other option is to just try to kill everything else. Let him charge you. He's going to fight you. He's going to kill a bunch of stuff. Then you fight on death maybe, or you just let that big knight kill one thing a turn. They only have 5 big knights, so if they're only killing one thing a turn, they're not getting through.
That's a lot of big knights.
It is a lot of big knights. It is. But, it is manageable. But so that sounds like a truly awesome event. With some really, it sounds like quite a lot of big wins as well. They weren't super close games. There was a couple close games in there, but a lot of them were
Yeah.
sizable wins, which is really exciting as well. Um,
Yep.
was there any particular highlights? What was your favorite game? And any particular takeaways? I mean, obviously we went through quite a lot there.
Yeah. My favorite game was probably just the Tau game. Just really, really good, clean Warhammer. And the gentleman Logan's beaten a couple of my buddies at like pretty important events before. So it was nice to just kind of travel over to a different province or territory or whatever people refer to it in their country or state. And kind of take on like the best player from like a different province. It's quite, I don't want to say like validating, but it's nice. And it's just again like good clean Warhammer. And the event was incredibly well run in general. Like it's like the guys at Gaming Under the Ice do a great job. Like Jay was the TO. And it was really nice because after the Super GT getting ranked #1 in Canada, they're trying to get more people over at their event. So when I showed up, it was the first time I'd ever been treated like this in Warhammer. They're like, "Oh, thank you for showing up to like our local event."
Yeah.
And it's just like
Nice.
it's great having you. And it was just really nice to be able to talk through games and chat with some world leader players and kind of help out where I could.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it was good. It's just very fundamental Warhammer. Our Codex is incredibly strong. I think I talked to you about this. If I wasn't taking a 40K break, and I didn't already have like plans for that weekend, I would be considering Tacoma, because I do not think that is out of the cards at all to post a really, really good result in. And world leaders are definitely capable of winning majors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're in a great spot. If everybody else wants to keep doing poorly, that's fine because I don't want to get I don't want to get nerfed. But I think that like we don't need to doom and gloom. I'm doing stuff now that I could never ever do with the index. A lot of it's with the 6-inch pound and consolidate, but we have access to shooting. The Prince is a huge swing, and just the early game trading with the spawn. I think that we're incredible, and I think that we're definitely an army to be worried about in the meta. But it's nice because we're kind of flying under the radar a little bit right now too, with like Death Guard and Thousand Suns, and like we're not seen as the problem, which has me very optimistic because Worlds is in November, and I have one more balance change before Worlds.
Yeah,
so
if we can dodge that one, and maybe they hit us in the next, that'd be great.
yeah, for sure. And to be honest, like I wouldn't even be surprised. Like the way that they feel for me right now, like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw nerfs. I don't think we're going to.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, everything feels like really, really solid.
Yeah.
With world leaders.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom. I think particularly losing Angron because so many people, like, first of all, absolutely stunning model. So a lot of people, he was like a centerpiece to their army, and losing that piece, I can totally understand why people are so upset because, you know, he is such an awesome model, and a lot of people probably spent more time painting just Angron than the rest of their army combined. Because when you've got that centerpiece model, you put a lot of love and care into it. So I totally understand people being like, "Oh, I can't use him," and just essentially cracking the shits. But I think, like, yes, he got significantly worse, but almost everything else in the book got better. You know, Exalted 8-bound maybe didn't get better. They maybe copped a bit of a hit, but pretty much everything else got significantly better.
And even though we lost like advanced charge army wide, now it's reliable on the units that you really, really care about having it. 8-bound have always just kind of challenged the midboard anyway. And if you're extending with them, that's usually not what they wanted to do, unless you had the no fallback exalted, which unfortunately we don't have anymore.
And I mean,
because they are very, very, very fallbackable.
And like the 8-bound these days absolutely murder shit. Like they're going in with strength 10 AP 2 damage. Like that's so much scarier than the previous data sheet. So, you know, sure, they're not going to be getting those turn 1 charges, but like you said, you're almost never taking them anyway. Like you threaten them, and it was good to be able to threaten them. But it was rarely the wise move to just full send in that first turn. There's also some people earlier comments that I saw online were about how like the faction's identity has changed, but I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think it has, because if you think about it, the identity was always like savage melee, which is still very much true,
Mhm.
fast, which is still very much true. If anything, we've gotten
Mhm.
faster because the plus
Six
two
inch.
moves
Yep.
is baked into everything. And then if you're able to leverage that charge pylon and consolidate 8-inch blood surge move, like your berserkers are teleporting around the table, like they're crazy fast.
Yep.
So we're still one
I
of the
love them.
fastest armies. We're still one of the hardest hitting melee armies. Sure, there's the Forge Fiends that are very, very good, hard to overlook. And that does change the identity a little bit, but I think it enhances it. It doesn't destroy it. It means
Nope.
now you can add a Forge Fiend, but you're still primarily doing your damage in melee. It's not a shooting
Yeah.
army, so
Nope.
yeah, I think people need to give it a chance. So if anyone that's listening to this is upset about the faction identity changing, just get some games in, and you'll pretty quickly realize that it still plays very similar. And
Yeah, I won GTS with the index as well,
yeah,
and I promise you that winning GTS genuinely feels easier with them now. Like it's like the difference between us and other factions now. I feel generally in a really good spot into basically anything in the game, including Death Guard.
yeah,
I'm like, and it's I guess a lot of it was with Eldar, but I've not lost to Death Guard.
yeah.
Um, it's yeah, I feel great about the Codex. Again, winning events feels easier now than it ever did in the index, and I don't feel like I'm having to punch up a lot anymore. And just having the mobility and expression with the 6-inch to really utilize all the tools that the game gives me in the core rules opens basically all the doors. So if there's one thing you can learn, it's early game trading efficiency, and then learn how to use your pylon and consolidate, and you will win your friend groups. You will end people's games immediately on turn 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing about the book that is a reasonable change, and I think it's a change for the better, is that there's a lot more skill expression and a lot less reliance
Mhm.
on luck. Because it used to be like if you didn't roll the advance and charge on your blessings, all of a sudden your whole game plan just kind of fell apart. Whereas now
Yeah.
you are 100% in control of whether or not you can advance and charge. And then the
Yeah.
other thing is the skill expression that we talked about literally for 5 hours now if you combine the two podcasts, like the skill expression of using those 6-inch pylon and consolidates at the right time in the right ways, like that is so deeply satisfying when you pull off that, when
Yep.
you see your opponent, they finish their movement phase and you're just like, oh, they're fucked. Like, because
Yeah.
the way that they've finished their movement phase, it doesn't matter what happens in their shooting phase. I'm
Yeah.
now going to be able to do this and then pile into that. And then you can sort of see the combo. And then when you execute it and your opponent's like, oh, I forgot about the 6-inch, or, I didn't budget on that, or I didn't expect that to happen. And then all of a sudden you just
Yeah.
pulled off this maneuver. It actually feels much more like you are winning the game. Whereas
Yeah.
previously it kind of felt like the army was winning the game. It was
Yeah.
Angron was winning the game by going in and destroying things and then getting resurrected, and the 8
Yeah.
men were winning the game by getting that turn 1 charge with the advance and charge and destroying things, but it wasn't really you that was winning it. Whereas now it's definitely
Mhm.
it feels like you've got your hands on the steering wheel a bit more. That's sort of
Yeah.
my experience with it anyway.
Yeah. 100%.
So yeah, I look forward to seeing what people can do. Have you? So obviously, it would be ridiculous for you to change the list at this point because you've just gone and done so much work. But is there anything that you're thinking about? I know last time we spoke, you were considering potentially switching up the enhancements and maybe putting the glaive on the Mo and putting the favored on the Slaughterbound. Is that? Have you decided the jury's out on that one, or is the verdict in?
I might like the glaive on the well with knights. First of all, I'm taking a 40K break, so I'll let the rest of you enjoy knights. um, um, I've yet to play around with it, but the math is a lot better for Mo into knights than the Slaughterbound, because the Slaughterbound alone, the 3 damage Slaughterbound with the Exalted I do not trust them to kill a big knight.
Yeah.
Is basically
Whereas the 10 berserkers with the
the 10 berserkers with Mo with the glaive does.
Yeah.
The 2 damage slaughterbound with the exalted 100% kills a small knight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my math's at now, is that I just trust the Mo squad a lot more.
Yeah.
And that basically the slaughterbound is going to be on a one-way trip against knights. But depending on the matchup and how late in the game you leave it, you might actually get multiple activations with the Mo because he's insulated by the 10-man, depending on where you put the -1 damage and like where you're putting yourself on the board. Because a lot of the knights are going to have to come up to be able to score and do anything in the game at all. So they're going to be there. So I think that Mo potentially being multiple use, as well as consistently killing big knights with the squad a lot more consistently than the slaughterbound, definitely puts him in a lot better spot, in my opinion. Especially when you think about like the fight first night. Like, and is the sweep 3 damage? Do you know? On a lot of the big knights,
it has 4 profiles because it's got the chain blade, which has like a strike and a sweep, and then it's got its claw, which has a strike and a sweep. So it has a 2 damage sweep, a 3 damage sweep, and like a 6 damage attack, and like an 8 damage attack or something like that.
Do you know off the top of your head how many attacks are on the 3 damage sweep?
I want to say 12.
So on average, they are not going to kill the entire squad, and Mo is going to get to swing.
Yeah.
And that's what's important with that. And then, as we mentioned, if you've double charged, then whatever else you put in is going to get their full like volley of attacks. But whereas the slaughterbound just isn't reliable enough, and that squad will absolutely get completely picked up in combat by whatever knight you put them into. And that's kind of like where I probably won't even be playing a game with my world leaders for like maybe a month right now. But basically that's where my math would sit at if I was going out to event in this meta. You want favored on the board, obviously. So maybe the slaughterbound goes with like a regular 8-bound squad, and maybe I transition the exalted into a regular 8-bound squad. Although I would want the exalted for sure to plink some wounds off big knights. But favored is important for the early game.
Yeah,
so
how
I definitely
important did you find favored? Because I'm yet to use it. In all of my test games, I haven't had favored, and at no point have I gone, damn it, I wish I had favored. So
pretty critical when you run into a melee matchup and you can't bite your fight on death. Because that is like game changing, and that's the most game changing instance of it. If you don't get your lethals into like a tank heavy matchup, it's annoying. Not getting your sustains, not great. The 6-inch is pretty reliable to get, so I wouldn't really worry about that. But not getting your fight on death in like a melee matchup is like critical.
Yeah.
So it just providing that insulation. And then the theory is the turn that Mo hops in the Rhino, if you're tiering them like I do in some of my games, Khorne's already got out the turn before and he's killed 1 or 2 units, so you're getting 2 extra dice anyway.
Yeah.
So that then you wouldn't need favored.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Right.
but that's the switch that I would be making, is probably glaive onto the Mo, just because the math is better and he's more survivable in 2 knights. If you think that that's going to be a problem, you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting to see how because knights obviously they pair into us quite well, but how do they go into the rest of the meta, and is the rest of the meta going to gatekeep them and sort of stop them from becoming something that we have to worry about? Is an interesting question. Before you go, one last question for you is you've gone through what's this? So you said it was 14 games or something like that, where you've gone. Lots and lots of wins. What factions are you scared of? Because obviously there's lots of things that you've got wins into that you're pretty confident that you could replicate those wins, in the perfect storm. Is there any factions where you just like keep that away from me?
I'll kind of play into anything. Even Thousand Suns, if they're not in the fallback and charge, With the 6-inch, you just tag as much as you can. It's crazy how fast that army kind of shuts down. Probably just, well, after last weekend, my least favorite matchup to have to play into is stat check Greater Demons.
Yeah.
Because stat check Greater Demons, even on great unclean ones, for some reason, if they have 2 CP to interrupt, will kill whatever you just like double charge them with.
Yeah.
And you're like, literally, what am I supposed to do right now? So if they're managing their CP well, stat check Greater Demons are like an absolute pain in the butt. Especially if they're rolling a little hot, like you just immediately lose the game on the spot.
Yeah.
That's something that I find incredibly annoying. I will deal with it. Do I think it's possible to beat? Yes. Obviously, it's just a really annoying matchup that I don't like playing. And in general, I don't like stat checks. I've never played as a stat check. And I am heavily biased against them because I think that you can play stat checks well without needing much actual player skill or expression. And that's frustrating to me. But stat check Greater Demons are definitely my least favorite matchup.
Yep, that's reasonable. That Endless Gift Great Unclean one, he needs to go. I'm not a big fan. He embarrassed me at WTC, and I will never forgive him for that. So I totally feel your pain on that one. But yeah, no, that's really inspiring as well. Just the fact that you think that we've got play into every faction, is something that not every army can say. Like there's certain armies in the game that they're really good into this side of the meta, but into that side they really struggle. Whereas I think you're right. I think we have the tools to deal with shooting armies. We have the tools to deal with combat armies. We have the tools to deal with like MSU. We have the tools to deal with like hyper elite stuff. I think the army itself has so many tools in it that you can actually just deal with all of this sort of stuff, especially if you're utilizing that player expression through those consolidate moves, those pile-ins, those charges. The way that you position your models with your charges can be so important. And I think we'll continue to share with the community, and hopefully we can elevate those world leader scores up to the point where we all get nerfed, and then we're back.
Yeah, wonderful.
But yeah. Alrighty, man. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really do appreciate you coming back on the show. And if you want to stop coming on the show, stop winning everything. Because as long as you keep winning, I'm going to keep having you on. So
wonderful. Awesome to be on here.
Congratulations again, mate. And enjoy your brief break from Warhammer. And look forward to hopefully seeing you in Atlanta if I can get my hands on one of those gold tickets. I think there's only one more event here in Australia that's giving out gold tickets between now and then. So I'm going to have to go to that, and I'm going to have to go hard. I might even run the double
I believe in you.
I might even run the double Berserker list and
see if I can... It's there for you. Just take it.
See if I can put into practice what we learned here. So awesome. All right, thanks again, mate, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cheers, mate. Alrighty guys, hope you enjoyed that. If you did, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment below, all of that good sort of stuff. It's a great way that you can help the channel grow. And if you want to help the channel more directly, head over to the Patreon. You can show your support there. Join the Discord community that we have where we talk strategy and tactics. We write lists together. We prepare for upcoming events. And we also have a ton of fun with banter, sharing hobby updates, sharing memes. It's a really great community. So check that out. It's a great way that you can show direct support for the channel. And also, you can pick up some merchandise over at blogforthebloodgod.com. We got shirts like this one here. We got neoprene objective markers. We got gaming mats. We've got dice. We've got all kinds of really cool stuff over on that website. So if you want to show your support for the channel and help me justify staying up until 2 a.m. so that I can get these international guests on the channel, then that's a great place to do so. And with all of that being said, we're going to leave it here. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.